In today's video, I'm going to talk about how to take apart your airbrush gun, clean it, and put it back together. I'm also going to show you a few different systems, their differences, and which one I prefer most. So let me briefly touch on the two different systems currently on the market. One is a single action, one is a dual action. The single action is most widely used in cookie decorators. These are very user-friendly and easily accessible. This one is the dual action system. It comes with a much larger compressor and therefore it can get very heavy. The other difference is the gun and how it operates. With the single action, all you have to do is pull this lever back for color to flow. It is also continuously blowing air. Color should only flow if the lever is pulled back. On the dual action gun, you have to push the lever down first before pulling it back. No air or color flows otherwise. This dual action system was my first one, and it definitely is a bit overkill for a cookie decorator. The compressor is way too powerful. I only ever used it at its lowest PSI, and even then it was very powerful. That's all I will say for this one, so let's put it away and concentrate on the single action systems that I have here. These look very different, but are basically all the same. The exception is this one here. It is a chargeable one, so you can use it without needing to have it plugged in. Personally, I only ever use it when I have multiple colors, so I don't have to clean the gun each time I switch colors. This one is distributed by Mad Plasics. I bought it from them because I like to support small businesses and because I liked the color. It's very pretty. I honestly couldn't tell you how long a charge holds, but for short periods of time, it works great. Next up, we have this one by Artfully Designed Creations. It's the same system. The only difference is that the gun feels much heavier. Apparently they put a lot of thought into it, but sadly I don't like it nearly as much as their old system, which was the Pegasus. I just could never warm up to it, and that's okay. A lot of decorators love it. It's just never been my go-to. You can also buy different guns for when you need to airbrush gold, which can clog up a regular gun more easily. But of course, these are sold separately. I didn't bring my old Pegasus out because I wrecked it and it has been deemed unusable. But if you're interested, you can buy it at the Sugar Art now. Alright, that's all I will say for this system, and we can put this one away now. The Cookie Countess and the Duff Goldman are basically identical. The guns are exactly the same, and the compressors are very similar in power and usage. The only difference is that the power level is a dial on this one, and on the Duff you have to click a button to switch from high to medium to low PSI. I love them both equally, and I will list all of these below, with the exception for the Duff. I think it has been discontinued, and I can't quite remember where I purchased it from. I want to say it was from Michael's, but I'm not sure. And I also don't know how much it was. But this stuff gun is the most widely used kind, and therefore chances are you have the same or a very similar one. So let's go ahead and open up the back so we can take the gun apart to clean. We will take all of it apart, however, not everything needs to be cleaned. Once that back part is off, it reveals what's inside. And as I am pulling back the trigger now, you can clearly see how it moves that needle back. The piece that I am unscrewing here is what's holding the needle in place, and that part does not need to be cleaned, so we can put it away. Also, please forgive me, I do not know all the technical terms of the different parts. Next is another piece that we need to unscrew. That also holds the needle in place, and it reveals a little spring. Also, once this piece is out, everything starts to wiggle a little bit more. So just proceed with caution. We don't want to damage the needle. Now, as soon as that spring is out, the lever is very loose. The next part is also connected to the needle, and in some of the guns this clicks in kind of in place. In others you can turn it a full 360 degrees. In this one here, and I think in the Cookie Countess one, once you put it in, you can only put it in one way and then it kind of locks in. So now we have just a needle in there. Okay, let's pull out the needle. It is nice and dirty. Definitely needs cleaning, that's for sure. You can also see where it actually only needs cleaning. So basically only the front part of the gun needs cleaning. So once we remove the little lever piece and unscrew the hose, those are the only parts that really need cleaning. Everything else we can leave out. Once the needle is out, these two pieces are gonna want to fall out right away. So let me show you what they look like. This is a very tiny piece, so if you work over a sink, be sure not to lose it down the drain. Next, we have this lever part which pulls out all the way. In some guns, this part and the part before are connected. With this Airbrush system, it is not. And once you put it back together, it's kind of hard to put it in that little hole that you see because it's moving. It's a moving part and it's just a little bit more difficult. Also, the ridges here, they have to face forward. If you face them the opposite way, it's the wrong way. Just make sure that you put it in the correct way again. Next up, we can unscrew the top. These these are actually two pieces, and they are protecting the needle which comes out right there. Also, if you drop it at this point and it falls onto this part, your whole gun will be ruined. This happened to me with my Pegasus, and that's how I can't use it anymore. So everything is very delicate. So you can either unscrew them and clean them separately, or you can leave them screwed together and just clean them that way. There is a rubber seal right in there that helps keep everything tight and airproof, because you have to make sure that everything fits tightly together, otherwise your gun is not going to work properly. So all we have to do now is detach the hose, because the housing of the gun has to go in to the cleaning solution, because all of the color still is sitting in that front part of the gun, and unless you also clean that, your gun is not going to work properly. Once you've detached the hose, you can see there is another rubber seal right there. Sometimes the hose gets a little bit grubby, and you can just wipe that with a damp cloth. So here are all the components of your gun. And all of these little pieces here don't actually need to be cleaned, because none of that will touch the color. So you can put all of these aside. Sometimes I put it like that so I can remember how it goes back together. Also, a good idea is, if you're doing it the first time, you can film yourself, or you can take progress pictures. That's what I did when I first tried it. We are ready to clean. I have a little dish here that I'm going to fill with some warm water. I wouldn't use too hot water, just so that you can put your finger in and not burn yourself. Also, I would stay away from harsh chemicals. Usually I just use some white distilled vinegar. I use it for all sorts of things to clean, and it works really well. And that's all you have to do. And if you don't have white vinegar, then you can just use hot water. I would stay away from all other kinds of chemicals, or even alcohol. As long as it's a low percentage alcohol, I would just stay away from it, because it can corrode the metal, and that's not going to be beneficial to your gun. This way you know it is safe to use for food, and it's not going to harm the insides of your gun. So immediately as I drop it in, you can see all the color that's being released from the needle, from the top part. Sometimes it's quite dramatic, depending on how much of color you used, how frequently you clean it or not clean it. So there can be quite a bit of color coming out even if you rinse it in between. So just rinsing alone doesn't normally do the trick. Once you're done with everything and you are ready to put your airbrush away, you definitely should clean it. Take it apart completely like this, clean it, and then put it back together once it's dried. So I just want to stress one more time, all you need really is hot water and a little bit of white distilled vinegar. Don't use any soap because you never know if you're going to be able to clean it all out. It's just the easiest way to just use hot water, if nothing else. That's plenty. And then all you need to do is let it sit for 5 to 10 minutes or so, depending on how dirty it's been, and just let it soak. Once it's done soaking, what you can do is close up all the holes and blow through the back, and that will be sure to push all of the residue color that might still be in there out the front, and then you can be certain that nothing is left behind. I just did that and look how much color came out. It's amazing. So now we are ready to take everything back out. I always have a paper towel next to me. Also, when you shake it like that, be sure you hold on to it really, really tightly. If it slips out of your hands and falls onto the tip, you have ruined your gun and you don't want to do that. So I wipe the needle, and sometimes there's still color coming off. Today I'm lucky, but yeah, just be sure you don't poke yourself. It is really sharp. So just dry it off very, very well, and then put it aside and continue to dry off everything. So the goal is to not have any residual water sitting in your gun. It can just cause rusting, or the components will deteriorate much faster. So everything needs to be extremely dry before you put it back together. You can try using a Q-tip or some paper towel and just get into all of the nooks and crannies and dry everything very well. And then again, if you want, plug up all the holes with the exception of the back and blow some air through it, and that will clean out most of the water, leftover water as well. Also, what you can use is this air in a container. You can basically just blow some air through the gun and dry it out that way. That also works. You can see how there is still water coming out right there. So just do whatever you can to get all the water out. There's a droplet hanging right there. So that means there's still some water left, even with everything that we did. I mean, generally I would say if you have the time, just let it air dry until the next day, and then for sure you will have all of the water out by then. Sometimes you don't have time to do that, and that's okay. But if you can, just let it dry overnight before you put it back together. Also make sure to take the paper towel and clean the compartment up top where you put the color in. That always has some residual color in as well. All right, now we are ready to put everything back together. Do you still remember how to put it back? Don't worry, I'm here to help. All right, I would suggest to put this front part on first, because once the needle is sticking out, you don't want to bump into it. So by putting this part on first, you're just going to make sure that once you put the needle through, you're not going to harm the tip of the needle. Next comes the little lever, and like I said, it's a little hard to find that hole that little piece has to go through because it's moving like this, so it takes a little bit of practice. Don't give up. Sometimes it just takes a little while. And remember that the ridges up top have to face backwards. So ridges in the front, that ensures that it's in the correct way. And then push it all the way in. Next, this little guy, and I'm going to show you how not to do it here, because there's two ways of putting this piece back in. It looks like it has a protruding belly, and I always get this wrong too. So the belly is not supposed to face the lever. If the belly protrudes towards the lever, it's in the wrong way. And sometimes it's almost easier to get a pair of tweezers because it's really tight in there and it can only go in one way, and then you have to turn it in order for it to be the correct way, and a pair of tweezers helps immensely. If you put it in the wrong way, this lever will be all loose. It needs to be nice and snug. So that's one way to know whether you put it in the wrong way. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to put it in the correct way. So remember I was talking about that belly that's protruding? Well, it needs to protrude away from the lever. So that belly needs to go the opposite way, just like so. I'm gonna show you here up close one more time so you can see exactly what it looks like. This is the way it's supposed to go in. So the front part is facing the lever, the belly part is facing the back of the gun. But remember, you have to turn it a quarter turn to make it fit into that slot, and then turn it back the correct way. And because it's loose, it's going to want to come back out. So unless it's held together with the needle, you have to be very careful. Otherwise it's going to fall out and then you're going to have to start all over again. So gently put the next piece, that long piece, in, and that should hold it in place until you put the needle back through. If you're worried, you can put the needle back in now. If you're okay, you can go ahead and put the spring back in and screw it tight with that other longer piece. Just make sure everything is nice and tight. I am going to take the front part off one more time just so you can see the needle come through, and so I can show you what to do, how far out to push the needle. So very carefully insert the needle. If you damage the tip of the needle at any point, you're gonna ruin your gun. Just be aware of that. So just gently push it. There is gonna be a little bit of resistance as you get to the top there, to the front part, because it gets really tight over there. So just push it until the needle comes out right there. And then usually I give it a little bit of a tap, but you just have to be super gentle with it. You don't want to push the needle out too far, because you can eventually open up that opening. If you keep doing, if you keep doing it, eventually that opening will get wider and wider, and that also is going to ruin your gun. So it's just, everything is very delicate. So I just tap it very, very lightly in the back before I screw it tightly. So now everything is back secure. And then we're gonna check and see if the lever works. And yes, it works perfectly now. It's got great resistance and it moves back and forth very smoothly. So we've put everything back together just as it's supposed to be. The last part is to screw the back on and to attach the hose. And then you just want to make sure that everything is nice and tight. And here you go. We've put it all back together. And it should work properly. However, before we put it away, what you can do is you can put a little bit of water through to check and see if there are any leaks, if it sprays without water coming through. If you don't want to do that, if you feel like, no, I'm just going to put it away, definitely check again before your next use. It's always good to check the gun first before you start, just to see if it sprays right, if everything is still nice and tight. So for the purpose of this video, I am going to test it for you and show you if we need to make any adjustments. So I've just put in some color, and then I'm going to turn it on without pulling on the lever to see if it sprays any color. If it doesn't, great. If it does, we're gonna have to make a couple of readjustments here and there. All right, so let's try and pull some color through, and it sprays wonderfully. There's no splattering. It's nice and smooth. Everything works great. So we're just gonna have to check and see if it is still nice and tight or if it's spraying color without me pulling the lever. And as I'm turning the gun back on, you can see it is actually spraying some orange color through without me doing anything to the lever. So we're gonna have to make some adjustments to it. And this is great because this way I can show you exactly what to do. So this is what shouldn't happen. If this happens, go ahead and turn your compressor off. Open up the back. Open up the little seal there and pull on your needle just a little bit and then push it back in. Tighten everything back up again. Close it up. And try again. It might take a couple of times, but it's a very important step. So now we've pushed a little bit of color out, so it's going to splatter a little bit when I turn it on. So you want to do this on a paper towel, and it's still spraying some color even with this first adjustment. So once again, turn the compressor off, open it up, and repeat that same step. Pull out your needle just a little bit. I'm going to take off the front just so you can see a little bit better. So there's a little bead of color right there that happened because we took the needle out and we pushed it back through the hole. So you see me adjusting the needle, I'm turning it a little bit, and then I'm tightening everything back up, and then we're gonna try again. Everything is nice and tight again. We're going to turn the compressor on one more time. And then we're going to check to see. And this time we have done a good job. It is no longer spraying any color out when it shouldn't. So just make sure that before you start a cookie, just go through these steps to see if your gun works properly. Because honestly, there is nothing more frustrating than an airbrush system that doesn't work well. It should not spray any color unless you pull on the lever. And it should spray nice and smooth. The lever should be nice and soft. There shouldn't be any resistance when you pull that lever back. It should feel really good in your hands. And then you can have a successful airbrushing session. And that's it. I hope you found this video helpful. I know it's a little bit longer than my usual videos, but I wanted to be thorough. I just wanted to include all of the steps so nothing gets left out. And I will link everything down below, all the airbrushes that I've shown, with the exception of the Duff, because like I said, it's no longer available. Leave me a comment if you have any questions. If there's something that was unclear, I'd be happy to answer all of your questions. And I hope your next airbrushing session will be a successful one.